everyone. Welcome to this new episode of Carolyn Talks. I'm your host, Carolyn Hayes, film critic and journalist. And this is the podcast / YouTube channel where I speak to film creators about their work, the industry, and what inspires them. And today I am joined by writer, director, and producer Musaab Mustafa to discuss his feature-length film, Marooned Awakening, which is an interesting film about this young man, Alex, who's having an internal existential crisis as he tries to figure out this murder mystery or the events of an accident, and struggling with his relationship with his father, who wants him to stay, and he's like, no, I want to go. So we're going to have a really, I think, a really in-depth conversation about this film and about the themes that Musaab explores in this film. But first, as usual, I like to have my guests say a bit about themselves and what got them into the film industry. So Musaab, thank you so much for joining me today. And can you tell our guests what inspired you to become a director and a writer?
Sure, 100%. Firstly, Carolyn, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on the show. I think, in terms of the things that have always drawn me to life, and I think in terms of what really progresses us in humanity is the art of storytelling. And it began as early as, the ancient era where we would sit around in circles and we tell, folk stories, and we would accompany our morals, our ethics, and our views in life. And I think, this kind of notion of understanding and being able to appreciate the greater good throughout the lens of cinema has always been something that's really spoken to me from a very young age. I watched, pictures like The Bicycle Thieves, The 400 Blows, La Haine, Doctor Strangelove, and films that really, pick apart humanity and present it to people in a very, beautifully executed way on screen. And I think, inherently, I've always felt like a bit of a storyteller, and I think film was kind of the medium where I wanted to tell stories.
And there's the films that you listed, like, I'm not familiar with some of them, but I do know, like, Doctor Strangelove.
Sure.
And, like, I think I can see kind of, like, inspirations from films that are very, like, not slow paced, but they're films that give the audience time to explore the surroundings, because I noticed that you focus a lot on the environment that the characters are in, particularly the beach and the water, and like it's very in this film in particular is very serene in a way. But I think that kind of makes sense because this film is in a way talking about the sea and the ocean and the environment, and even the title Marooned. Like when you're marooned, that means you're stranded on shore, right? So like you're exploring, like taking the time for discovery. So like as I said, you talked about Doctor Strangelove, but are there any other films that inspired your the way you not only structure your films, but the way you film them?
Yeah, sure. I think for this particular picture, I think the films that I really took influence from were in terms of non-linear structure, Chris Miller's Memento, in terms of the use of nature and the kind of tracking, unconventional camera shots. Took a lot of that from Terrence Malick, films like Knights of Cup, Badlands. And then I think also the kind of thematically, the relationship of father and son was really kind of built up on, like I alluded to earlier, Victoria De Sica's Bicycle Thieves, but also, There Will Be Blood. This kind of notion of when you take away the maternal aspects of a family, you are almost left with a very dysfunctional, very toxic, masculine kind of product. I really wanted to kind of depict that. And Alex's father in the film, he plays, your kind of stereotypical, forgotten in the past, English kind of blue collar worker, who life in the modern day, the occupation of fishing has become a bit defunct, and he's starting to struggle with kind of clinging on to any sort of self-significance. And it's all these kind of things that we've tried to really mirror and put into the film.
Yeah, it's true. Like the film does, I think, talk a lot about people being stuck in the past. Like for Alex and his father, like for Alex, he's a journalist and he has these aspirations of moving to the big city. So like the film talks about being stranded in the past, and metaphorically, and I think also physically, but metaphorically, it's talking about the relationship between his father, Alex, and his father, because Alex he's an aspiring journalist and he wants to move to the big city away from the island that they're living on. And his father wants Alex to stay. He wants to hold Alex close. And it's not he's trying to control Alex's life, but I think he's trying to control his environment. He wants things to stay the same because like his like they lost his wife and like Alex has lost his mother, and he's trying to hold he suffered such a traumatic loss, and like they never talk about it, but it's obviously affected the way he's seeing life, and he's like slipping. He feels like his life and his family is slipping away from him. So before we begin to really talk about the individual characters, I talk about why particularly the loss of a mother in a story like this, and like I just said, it leaves like the absence of the mother and the absence of a female figure leaves a bit of a toxic masculine environment, and it's not clear from the beginning, but like the film does become progressively more obvious as the film goes on. So I thought it was interesting, like their relationship seems fine at the beginning, but then as Alex talks more and more about leaving, like the tension increases, and then the angst and animosity between them increases. So talk about first why the absence of a mother instead of making it a story about a mother and a son who the father figure has left.
Sure, 100%. I think naturally when we wrote the play, the film, sorry, we drew a lot from Cameron's experience growing up on Guernsey, which is a very small island on the coast of England. Not to say that his relationship with family isn't good. His relationship with his family, or is fantastic and very supporting. But we really want to channel his perspective in regards to what it's like for a young man who grows up in a world that seems, limitless in opportunity, but his environment, despite being so beautiful, kind of inhibits him to move further. So it was a lot easier for us to write from the perspective of a son first. And then the reason we chose then to pick a father and a partial mother is we really thought we could really build up a notion that, in toxic masculinity, one of the most endemic issues are the fact that men don't speak world of dialogue, a plethora of emotion in those moments of lack of communication between the two. So it was just a narrative that we thought we could really flesh together. And again, kind of drawing on this idea of the traditional family, when you take away the tenderness of the mother, which the mother, traditionally provides for a family, then you're left with a very harsh, hostile environment. And we thought that would be a good setting to then set this drama in and develop from there. Not to say that we wanted to discourage any female characters. I think Tilly Keeper did a fantastic job as Alex's girlfriend. And I think she really was able to add a strong female voice. But I think for the particular effect we were trying to achieve, I think it just seemed more appropriate for us to go down the route of the grieving father.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I've been talking about the grieving father. Like Alex himself doesn't realize that his father is grieving. Like he's so stuck in his own his own life and his own ideas that he doesn't really look at his father, which is interesting because kids are always saying they want their parents to see them, to understand them and to support them. But in turn, Alex isn't seeing his father, he's not seeing the isolation that his father is feeling. He's not seeing the grief that his father's experiencing. And he's also not seeing the fear. He's not saying that his father is afraid of him leaving, He just looks at it as his father trying to control him. He just looks at it as his father. Also, I think he looks down on his father as well as other people in the community because he looks down on their life and he thinks their life is too simple, that is mundane and it's too routine. And he has this idea that the living in the city, in the big city, is about, that's where true life is, that's where true experiences is. And he doesn't realize how selfish he is and how myopic he is, and also how I think what's the word I'm looking for? Biased he is, and the way I put it in my notes is like he's like many people who don't live in the city, especially if they live in like small communities, like out in a country or on a small island. I'm from a small island, but like they believe that being in the big city is going to be exciting, that everything is going to be so much better. But like they look at life as from like the grass is always green on the other side, and they don't see the people. Same thing. He doesn't see his father. He's not seeing what his father is really experiencing. he has his own misconceptions about people in the city. You know, he doesn't know that people in the city struggle. You know, they struggle with poverty, they struggle with financial struggles, they struggle in working for companies with employers who mistreat them, who don't support them. You know, he doesn't understand that living in the city is expensive. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. So I think in that way, Alex is also a very good example of people who, I think he, to me, and he is a very good example of people who don't pay attention to everyone, to the world. You know, they don't pay attention to the people around them. They're just very self-involved. Like everything is about me, 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 but they don't take the time to understand the people around them, which is interesting because he wants to be a journalist, but in wanting to be a journalist, he doesn't take time to investigate the people around him and pay attention to what he's seeing.
That's spot on, 100%. And you're the first person to ever make the point about he doesn't investigate the people around him. That's a very interesting point. And I think, you know, it's truly the testament as well to, I think, just parenthood. You know, how do you preach to your children the mistakes you know you've made without actually having provided any evidence yourself of your kids not to do them? And I think it's very difficult, and I think it kind of shows that kind of tether in parenthood, where sometimes the only way for your child to learn is just to go out and do it themselves. But yeah, no, it's a very sensitive and fragile topic, and we have to be very careful in terms of the way we wrote it and the way we constructed the dynamic. And fortunately for us, you know, when we had Murray McArthur come along, you know, tremendous actor, and just the way, you know, just his presence and his aura, you know, really brought a whole new dimension to the role that we didn't really think about when we were fleshing it out. And I think he really enabled us to really create a character of substance, and I was quite genuine. I think audiences really been drawn to the relationship, especially through what Murray's been able to provide.
And Murray's character, like as he plays the father, and he's an angler, so he's like a fisherman. And I want you to talk a bit about using the ocean and fishing and the sea and and like coastal environments as the basically the impetus for everything that goes on, because like the stories that Alex investigates or that he writes about, a lot of it has to do with the sea, with like things that are happening along the sea. Like there's at the beginning of the film, there's like a news clipping where it's like talking about not global warming, but like and like climate change and how it impacts the coastal regions. But then also like his father, like which I also think is interesting, because like in doing all of these stories about environmental disasters and about the sea and everything, he doesn't actually realize that the same things he's reporting on directly impacts his father. Like he never once asked his father, well, like, what do you think about how this situation is going to affect your livelihood as a fisherman, you know? And like he like all of these stories that he covers on is about the coast, it's about the island that he lives on, it's about the life that he lives on, but he doesn't value it, you know? So talk a bit about using water and how Alex relates to the sea, but not really, and how like it's tied into his father.
No, sure, 100%. So we definitely really emphasize this kind of like nautical theme, and the island itself definitely plays, you know, the role of its own character. And I think the reason being is, first, you know, we really want to emphasize that Murray's character comes from a long lineage of kind of blue collar workers, and so your environment really dictates, you know, whether or not you eat, whether or not you survive. And at times, you know, nature can be very beautiful, but nature can also take lives. So that's something we really wanted to emphasize. And then also, you know, the kind of double entendre of Marooned Awakening. Marooned Awakening, A is the setting, you know, he's set on a beautiful island, and he's trying to, you know, cross the water to the big city. But, you know, to cross the water, you know, there's perils in that. And then obviously, you know, when you I don't want to give so much away, but then when you watch the film and you really understand the kind of perspective of where the investigation takes from, that kind of opens up a new kind of interpretation for that title, Marooned Awakening. So I think, you know, setting and the kind of nature is a massive part of the film. And, you know, the best way to create scenes of serenity is through, you know, very calm, tranquil, you know, shots of the sea. But at the same time, you know, there's the, you know, you've got the cliff edges on the island. You know, you've got the, you know, the scene with the beach ants. And so it's this kind of juxtaposition of calamity and catastrophe, but both within the same place.
Yeah, no, the beaches. I love the beach. I'm from an island. I'm in the Caribbean, so I love the ocean. I love the
Nice.
beaches. Like my favorite is the beach is my favorite place to be. But I also know, like, as beautiful as you're saying, as beautiful as it is, like I don't underestimate it. Like I respect the ocean. Like I respect
100%.
the danger that the ocean poses. And I mean, talking that you're saying, like the cliffs and everything. Like I also don't like cliffs. And it's not that I'm afraid of heights, but just like the thought of walking along cliff edges and stuff like stresses me out, because I've done that in back home in Barbados. There's like areas along the north coast of the island where you can go on the cliffs and you can like overlook the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, and the only thing beyond that point is Africa. Like the next landmass is Africa. So like walking along cliff edges and that stuff, it stresses me out. So like when I do see people in films or TV shows walking along like short like cliffs edges, it always stresses me out, because I'm just like, I don't know how the actors do it. But that's as you're saying, that's the beauty and the danger of it. And it's like for Alex, like, and also for his dad too, like their life, their this situation that they're in, as I had said earlier, like as the tension increases, like you get the sense that something very bad is going to happen. And walking along cliff edges like that, you know, it's beautiful, but as you like, the path can become narrower and narrower, and like the danger increases till it gets to the point where Alex himself is on a precipice. You know, it's like if he falls off, like he might not make it. And like even not only he might not make it personally, but his relationship with his father might not recover. So that's also the very interesting thing about it. Like, and this is this is a thing with relationships with children and parents. Like every child, every relationship between a parent and child always gets to this point where the child wants to break away and do their own thing. Like they like parents raise children to grow up to become adults and to live their own lives. But like it's the reality of actually letting the child go that all parents struggle with. You know, they're like, I raised you, I grew up to be independent, to have your own life, to pursue a career. But then when when the actual reality starts to occur, parents are just like, oh wait, I'm not mentally prepared for this. You know, I'm not mentally and emotionally prepared to actually let my child go and let my child like go off and like using their form of a bird, spread their wings and fly. And for like children, like for us, like once we do start to do that, we don't think about how it feels for our parents, because we like very much like Alex, like we're always just think, I want to go off and do this thing for myself. I want to live my life and do all of these grand things, but we don't think about our parents. You know, we don't think about what it's like for our parents to emotionally and mentally and physically let us go. And of course, as adults, as we get older, we see it. You know, we in hindsight we can understand, but like Alex in the moment, he doesn't see. He's very like, even you talking about Emily, she's the person that questions him, and she does it in a very different way to his father. But she's like, what's wrong with the life we have here? You know, what's wrong with your father being a fisherman? What's wrong with this guy that like Alex mentions this guy who's a brick builder, and he's like, he's looking down on this guy's life. He's looking down on this guy's profession. And like, I made it in my notes. I was just like, but there's nothing wrong with being a bricklayer, which is what Emily says. And he's talking about, oh, but he could have aspired to be something great. He could have gone to the city. But I was thinking, but you know, Alex, without people like him, without bricklayers, you wouldn't have a city to go to. You know, the cities don't build themselves. You know, you need masons, you need electricians, you need carpenters, you know, you need all of these people who do like what a lot of people consider menial tasks or skilled labor. But I'm less like, the world would not function without these people. And Alex can't see that. You know, he's looking down on Emily for working in an office, but like her being in an office helps her society to function. You know, the town, the country, the island they live in wouldn't function without people like her and without people there.
I think the interesting thing was that is, I think Alex's character, he's definitely a explorer, and I think conventionality is just doesn't appeal to him in any shape or form. And I think the main antithesis he has to his father and his girlfriend is they're very much symbolic of very consistent and lack of change in their lifestyle. Whereas I think he's the kind of chap, you know, who wants to go and explore the world, and he's always constantly looking for a story. He's constantly looking for, you know, some sort of sense of suspense and, you know, excitement and danger. And so when you have a character like that in a setting like that, And I think that was kind of symbolically how Cameron felt, growing up in Guernsey. He's a very adventurous young man. And it's how do you break away from that kind of environment and go spread your wings? And I think, for young people, the thing that makes sense the most is, break away to the big city where anything's possible. So 100%, I think it also represents also the ignorance of youth and how I think you're very strongly opinionated, but until you actually, experience the world firsthand, that you don't generally have you know, a true understanding or a validated opinion of what is out there in the world.
Yeah, and as you're mentioning, a lot of the inspiration for the story and for the character of Alice came from the actor who plays in, Cameron Ashplant. And so talk a bit about working with Cameron and also with Murray McArthur, who plays the father. Like, how did you get in touch with them? And like, did you have the story in your head before you met Cameron, or like, did you meet and then you guys start to formulate this story? Because I think it's interesting that you drew so much inspiration for Alex from Cameron's life.
Yeah, sure. So me and Cameron actually went to university together. And so we both went to Durham together. And before we made Marooned Awakening, we made a 3-part docu-series called The Balkans, shot in Romania, Serbia, Macedonia, Bulgaria, and Kosovo. And it was a bit of just like an intellectual project of ours where we looked at political, environmental, and social issues facing the region today and kind of onset effects of the Yugoslav war. And as we spent, 2 weeks out there filming, we really got to know each other. And what really kind of stuck out with his story was the fact that he was, this, young, starry-eyed guy, what's going on, actor, wants to see the world. And he's kind of held back by the fact that he's got a very uniform life on this very beautiful island. So that was definitely where the idea first came. And I think maybe a year and a half after that, after we did the Balkans, we knocked our heads together and we started writing Marooned Awakening. And initially, we kind of developed the idea with that kind of narrative, that kind of character development in mind for the protagonist. But then we thought, how do we add another layer in terms of storytelling? And when the audiences go and watch it, the kind of different tangents and how the tangents cut between time. This is kind of an idea that I fleshed out. And then we kind of fleshed out in terms of relationships and the other characters. And then we kind of really developed the kind of family dynamic. And, the best way to write a story in terms of hindering someone from moving on is some sort of, relationship that holds them back. And traditionally, that is the case, it's either family or, loved ones, what have you. So that's kind of how me and Cameron came together. And then with Murray, after we got backing for the film, we were then, struck with the very important job of finding our leading man. And Murray had worked with Murray had auditioned for our producers before, so they knew who he was.
Okay.
And we were very fortunate to work with him. This early on in my career, he just come straight off working on The Northman, and then he came and worked with us. He's got years of experience. Doctor Who, Outlander, Game of Thrones. The man's really been around the block, and he's a professional to a T. So the moment he really stepped on set, you can see the whole production team really were magnetized by his kind of charisma and the way he carried himself on set, and the heart and soul he puts into his performance. And I think that really helps evoke a really good performance out from Cameron. I think he really appreciates the best performances come when you're bouncing off another great actor. So that's kind of how Murray came on, and till this day, we're still very good friends. We talk a lot, and he's doing great things in his career.
Yeah. So talk a bit now about how Murray himself related to his character of that, and like what kind of input he had into the character.
It's quite interesting. So Murray grew up in a very small town in the southwest of England, in Devon. And he was, he's just really, big, strong, athletic guy, but he really wanted to be an actor. And he comes from a family of mushroom farmers. So he was in a very similar predicament as Alex, where one day he, told his parents, this is not for me. I want to go into acting. I want to move to the city, and I want to live this, live this life of performance. And obviously, to his family, it was a very foreign very, ambiguous kind of world which they knew very little about. So I think he kind of experienced the same kind of dilemma that Alex did, and I think for him it was very easy then to kind of be empathetic towards Cameron's character, and also then be able to act opposite Cameron's character in a very honest and a very genuine way.
Yeah, I think for especially for these more independent films where you have performers who relate to the characters, it really does help with like not only for
100%.
you as a director and writer, like developing the stories, but it helps them to, I think, get more in touch with the stories and make it more interesting. Because like for me, as I said, I'm from the Caribbean, so like I relate a lot to the whole wanting to move away. I honestly didn't want to move. It was my sister who wanted to move to Canada. And my mom was like, we're twins. So my mom was like, if one goes, the other one has to go. I was like, do I really have to? My mom was like, your sister is not going to live in Canada by herself. So so we moved there, and I was like crying. She was happy. I was bawling my eyes out when we were like moving, and it was like a whole existential crisis. So like when Alex was talking about, like I want to go and live in the big city, I want to do all this, and I was thinking like, dude, you have no idea what city life is like. You don't. And like, his dad is always talking about, I made this life for you. I like everything is perfect. Like I built this life for you because his dad provides for him, and his dad thinks that he's ungrateful, but it's not that Alex is ungrateful. Well, in a way he is kind of ungrateful because it's the way he looks down on his father's life, like he doesn't understand the importance of the job his dad does. But as I mentioned earlier, like everyone plays a part in how society runs. Like his dad is a fisherman, and then like that's an important job. He's providing a source of income for himself and his son, but he's also providing food for people. So I see this both sides of the stories and the characters. So now I want to talk about we talked a bit about the marooned aspect, which is the island, the coastline, and like being stranded, and like Alex feeling like he's stranded there. But there's another aspect to the whole name of being stranded, and also the awakening. And this is, I don't know if it's obvious, but it's like but Alex himself is trapped in his own mind. Like they're it's pretty obvious early on, to me anyway, that he was mentally stuck, and like he's trapped in his mind, and like I was figuring from the beginning, I was like, was he in a coma and all of this? And I'm just thinking how he's stuck in the very place that he wanted to escape, and that's like terrifying for him. He's like, how do I get away from this? But this time he can't, like his body can't move. So I want you now to explore the whole first coming up with the name of Marooned Awakening. I think it's such an interesting title because it's a great use of both words to explain the situation that Alex is in, but then exploring the whole being stuck in your own head and the mental and the inability to move your body and the inability to not be able to control your body the way you want to.
Sure, 100%. Let's go right into the twist then. So inevitably, the way we shot it is obviously we had the present day stuff that was very naturalistic, and that was the investigation that Alex's character kind of partakes. But then this is also then cut with the black and white scenes. And what the black and white scenes are is, I read maybe 6-7 months before we started reading the film about people who were in comatose states. And what really interested me about that was your body's completely numb, but your mind still operates. And your mind still operates, but it cannot create any new thoughts because you don't partake in any actions. Therefore, if you are, then you're almost trapped in a state of limbo where all you have is your previous thoughts to look back on and kind of reflect. Now, I thought that would be a very interesting perspective if then, say, for a detective or from a detective point of view. And wouldn't it be even more interesting if the reflection was presented in a way where you, the audience, followed the journey only to find out that the victim was just replaying the whole kind of cycle in their head. And that's where we kind of meshed the kind of psychological twist from. You know, when you find the boat, when you see the boat action in the end, and you realize that all these red herrings and trails where you thought it could be the father, it could be this person, maybe Alex is the murderer, it all leads back to him. And we very, I like to say quite skillfully, we then executed the black and white scenes, which were then just his subconscious come to life. So you know you have the naturalistic stuff, which is the replaying of the events that lead to the death. You have the black and white stuff, which is the present day, where it's Alex reflecting on his thoughts, reflecting on his his mother, on his past, this kind of and his existential kind of limbo. And then you have the stuff in the hospital, which happens, drip feeds after the accident and contribute to the kind of suspense of who is the victim. Whereas you find at the end that Alex is a victim both in his own mind and in his own life, as he's a victim of murder. And that is kind of the complexity of Marooned Awakening.
Yeah, because it's interesting because as you said, like for people in who are in a comatose state, like they don't have any present to experience. They can only go back through the events of their own past. And like for him, like, he's investigating his own life, but he's also investigating this incident that happened to him, and he's going through the motions and the steps. And is like there's an interesting thing that his dad says where he brings this knife to his dad, and his father's like, are you like, you want to be a journalist so bad and you're so obsessed with these stories, like you see one thing and you're creating a narrative around this thing, like he's speculating. And he's not like really he's taking like 10 and 20 and 50 steps ahead, and he's not thinking about just the actual reality that he's in. And I thought that was interesting because his dad was like, you're creating a story to fit the narrative you want. Like you want this to be a big story, so you're creating this big story in your head. And I think that's in a way where how for a lot of us, like sometimes when we're in a situation and it seems that things aren't working out the way we want it to be, we can kind of look at it as, like we would say, oh, like and sometimes I say to myself too, like, oh, the universe has it out for me. Like, like there is a conspiracy against my life. And like, you don't really mean that it's a natural conspiracy, but you just mean like, it feels like everything is holding you back. It feels like you're wondering, why can't I succeed? Why can't I take this next step? And you're wondering, what did I do wrong? Why can't I just like be able to move forward? Why you watch other people succeed and you're wondering, why not me? And he's going through that, and in a way, but in his case, he's looking at it as being a conspiracy with the police, like the police is working with the murder and all of this stuff. But as you got closer to the end, you realize what's happening. I think it kind of shows like how we ourselves can sabotage our own lives without even realizing 100%. It. And we can be our own worst enemy. A lot of us, we create own stumbling blocks for ourselves and we don't realize it. And other people are telling us, but we don't see it. So I thought it was interesting that's and like as I'm talking about it, I kind of like really think about how like we sometimes we don't see like the problems that we cause for ourselves, but also like even in using the metaphor of a person who's in a coma and they can only see their life in hindsight, like that's for a lot of us, we get to a point where we can't move forward and the only thing we can do is look back and try to figure out what did we do wrong, where did everything start to go wrong. And that's kind of like what I think kind of like what film is about, not necessarily about Alex, but it's kind of like how we as people, we always sometimes hit a brick wall, and we can't move forward, we can't go up, we can't go around. So the only thing we can do is turn around and look back to where we came from and figure out how did I get here.
100%. I think that is one of the most troubling things of humanity is we can reflect for the rest of our lives, but once an action is taking place, there's nothing we can do to change them. Mm-hmm. And I think it's also in the sense that our further desires can often be our greatest demise. And it's, these kind of very innate things in humanity, I think work really well on screen because regardless who you are, you can really connect to that. And I think also when we went to make this film, we wanted to be seen as many people as possible. And therefore we had to be very careful to ensure that we can create enough tropes of empathy and sympathy for enough people that it could appeal to, as wide an audience as possible. And I think, we really try to break down a lot of, very, very primal kind of philosophical fears I think all humans have experienced at some point in life.
For sure. I myself have existential crisis almost every day. You know,
Sure.
I sometimes I wonder, like, especially for my job, I'm like, Carolyn, what are you doing? Like, why? And like, I always wonder, like, why are other people getting more opportunities that I'm not getting? You know, why is this editor not responding to my pitch? Why is this editor not responding to
Sure,
my email?
sure.
But
It's a tough
eventually,
game.
like,
Yeah.
but
It's a
eventually,
tough
I
game,
just get to the point.
journalism.
You know, right? Eventually, I get I'm
Yeah.
like Elsa, and I just let it go. Uh, but like, what has been the response from other people for the film, like from audiences, or even from the cast, or even the crew and other filmmakers that you've interacted with? What has been the response to the film?
Yeah, sure, 100%. I think it's been really positive, really warm. And I think as a filmmaker so early in my career, it's been very, 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 it's been very inspiring that so many people have taken enjoyment to the film. And obviously, so early in my career as well, it's, you're very limited in terms of resource, in terms of what you can do. So it's very important that you still try to make something, that's worth people's time, something that's worth substance, or something that will evoke conversations between people. And so I think we managed to, me and the team, we managed to create a decent body of work, especially this early on in our careers. And I think people have been very receptive to the themes, to the kind of narrative twists. And, whenever you hear different interpretations and people have conversations about interpretations, I like to think, I've done my job. And I think it's also, a testament to, it's my first kind of fiction piece. And I mean, to be able to work with people like Murray, people like Tilly Keeper, Tim McInnery, it's really, really, not just comforting but inspiring. That you think, that there is value in what you make, and people of esteem see value in it, and that really kind of wants to make work harder, propel you to do more. So I think it's been really good, and I'm very happy that it's now out in the US and Canada. We're currently doing a limited theatrical release in the UK, and we're just trying to get as many people to see Rude Awakening as possible, and really kind of have conversations like we're having, which I think is the kind of underlying essence of what cinema is. People talk about humanity and how it was presented to them on the screen, and how it made them feel.
That's great. So as we begin to wrap up now, like, what's next for you, or what other themes are you looking to explore as a filmmaker? Like, you're doing a bit of existential theme, and you're doing the whole concept of being stranded. So like, what's next what's the next theme you're looking to explore in your next project?
No, sure, 100%. I definitely fancy myself as a multi-genre director, and I think the next project I do definitely gonna be close to home. I was born and raised in London, so that obviously that kind of setting itself has a whole different narrative. And we're currently in development for a few scripts. We're hopefully looking to get off the ground by the end of the year. But yeah, it's kind of same kind of style, really like gritty kind of cutting edge drama that really speaks from both a philosophical but also from a kind of dramatic point. And I think something just really very true to humanity, and something that's just a bit of a expose of humanity on screen, but it's executed through a different genre, or through a different kind of narrative, is what I'm looking to achieve.
That's great, because I think I think it would be interesting if, like, in your films, this is just me, like, if you like pursue like different, each film has kind of like a theme. I think the reason I say that is because I love anthology series. I love how people are able to build, like, you have these separate stories, but then they all just build up to be this one really big interconnected story. So that's just a personal a personal preference of mine. But again, congratulations to you, and I wish you and the cast and the team who worked on the film like a much success. And I think I love these kind of films because it makes me think about things that I either wasn't thinking about before, or it makes me think about things in a different way. And I love film for this. I love film because it's a medium that not only sparks conversation, but it's a medium that allows people to visualize their thoughts, and it helps people to then in turn vocalize the thoughts they had, and like to speak about them, like you're talking about the themes with the film. For you, like for me personally, there's a lot of things that I've been grappling with myself personally in my career and stuff. So like I love when I'm able to relate to films and to stories like this.
Carolyn, it's been my pleasure. Thank you ever so much, and thank you for your kind words. And thank you also just for such a rich interview. You really seen everything that we intended for audiences to see. I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much. So as we wrap up, so can you say talk about where the film is going to be showing? Is it going to be platformed on any platforms?
Yeah, of course,
platforms or anything?
100%. It's available to watch on Amazon Prime, Vudu, Apple TV, iTunes, all the major US and Canadian digital platforms.
Mhm. And do you have an official website for the film where we can find information about you and your projects and everything?
No, sure. You can check out IMDb and our Wikipedia page.
So again, thank you so much, Musaab. Thank you so much for talking to me today.
Cheers. Thank you. Pleasure's all mine.